midterm budget and economic review. You also get copies of this one, both hard copy and electronic copy. And then finally, you also receive copies of the NDS1 mid-term review. This is the review pertaining to the last 2.5 years since we started implementing the NDS1 document or strategy. So 3 documents are coming your way, and what are very useful indeed as legislators pertaining to this budgetary process. In my presentation this morning, I'll focus on some global events, global developments, the domestic economy, a few remarks on infrastructure and how well we're doing on the NDS1, and then basically then present the 2024 macro-fiscal framework, and then the budget priorities, and then try to conclude. I'm sure there'll be a few things that are omitted, which I'll also speak about. Yeah, so that's so global developments first. Next slide, please. Colleagues, the global economy is not in good shape at all. It's not in good shape at all. What we're seeing is a slowdown, where we expect growth this year to be 3%, and then in 2024 it will be more like 2.9%. So I'm expecting a very flat, tepid growth. The global economy is under pressure, and you can see where the pressure is coming from. Just look at those, the last 2 columns there. You can see that the advanced economy is growing at 1.5% this year, and then next year 1.4%. It's not looking good. The UK 0.5%, 0.6% next year. US 2.1, bit better, but 1.2 next year, and so forth and so forth. China, this is where we've got some hope, growing 5% this year, 4.2% next year. India 6.3, 6.3. That's what is happening in India. And then our continent, Africa, basically 3.3 to 4% next year. Nigeria, I just picked one of the largest economies in Africa, 3.3 next year. 2.9 in 2023 and 3.1 next year. So, but overall, the global economy, you can see the numbers out there, 3% this year and 2.9% next year. So it's tough out there. The economy is not doing well globally for various reasons. We hope that the economy will recover from the COVID situation, but before that could happen, you know what happened during COVID? A global supply chain ceased. We saw oil prices eventually begin to go up, and then we also saw inflation begin to move upwards. Then interest rates started moving upwards. All that doesn't augur well for the rest of us, because then we'll be reporting that higher than normal inflation. And also, if we have to borrow abroad, we have to pay a bit more than we used to pay. I recall a governor 3 years ago, we used to borrow at about 8%. But now you cannot get 8% money anymore. Not because Zimbabwe is now higher risk, none of that. But it's because generally there's been a structural shift upwards in interest rates due to high inflation. Now we're borrowing at about 11%. It's not higher at times. So clearly there's an issue. Next slide, please. If you look at the inflation situation, as I have said, you can see the peak in inflation in 2022, the global inflation, which is the blue, at 8.7%. That's very high. I'm telling you, from the global economy, the highest inflation in 40 years. But look, it looks better going forward. This year, it will trend downwards for 5.9, 4.8. I'm just following the blue line, 4.8 in 2024. So, but it's still high inflation. Still high inflation. We have every reason to be concerned about importing that inflation, but also, borrowing at higher interest rates globally. Next slide, please. There's a lot of numbers here. This is just looking at the commodity trend. What happened is that these GDP growth figures, especially for a country like China, they drive the sentiment on global commodity prices. and we're a commodity producer, and a commodity exporter. So the moment you see Chinese growth taper downwards, there is an issue. So you can see most of these commodities, if you look at the numbers, just comparing 2022 into 2023, for example, all of them are showing literally a drop. 2022, 2023, a drop, and then 2024, a bit flattish, but generally it's a drop as well. So all these commodity prices, whether you're looking at oil, energy, non-energy, agriculture, grains, fertilizer, it is the same story. But of course, we like it when fertilizer prices fall, because we want to import cheaper fertilizer. So, but overall, this doesn't help us in terms of exports. And we've seen our export earnings in the first 9 months of this year drop due to a fall in commodity prices, just because the global economy is growing a lot slower. Governor will give you more details. You see the numbers for lithium, for gold, you will see the drop that I'm talking about when he gets to the balance of payment situation during this presentation. So just that was a very short, broad brush presentation of the global situation. It's not good out there. The next slide, please. I now turn to the domestic economy. So what we've experienced during the Second Republic is basically a U-shaped economic growth profile. We're in 2018 with a growth rate of 5%. Then 2019, we remember when cyclone Idai, when the ground it went down to minus 6.3%. In 2020, we just before we could recover with COVID, minus 7.8%. Then we recovered in 2021, a growth rate of 8.5%. Last year, 2022, growth rate of 6.5%. And then this year, with the growth rate, initially when I did the prognosis in the year, we thought the growth rate would be 5.3 for 2023, but my technical team says, Minister, we have a bit more upside. So it's now 5.5%. 23, 5.5%. Next year, I'll show you the figures. I'm going to tell you, next year we're expecting a growth rate of 3.5%. So there'll be a slowdown next year in response to what I'm going to talk about globally, but also locally. I must say that really the issue for us in terms of what's happening this year is the whole kind of El Nino situation, and also some of the power outages that have been helpful in terms of supporting industry, hence this slowdown in GDP growth. But El Nino is what we should really watch out for. It is going to hurt agriculture. Most of you are farmers here, so you know what I'm talking about. Next slide, please. Then, in terms of which factors are driving the economy, just looking at 2023, you can see agriculture at 9.7%. That's quite high. You can see accommodation and food activities. This is the tourism sector plus restaurants and so forth. Even that's the star performer at 20.5% in terms of the 2023 projections. The laggards, those that are a lot slower, I see 0.7. What's that second? Is that professional activities? What else we saw? 0.9. Number 4, which is electricity. That's flat. I think I made the big jump in 2021, 2022, but now that's flat. And then we see also the figures for 2024. I might as well tell you about that. You can see agriculture 2024, we expect negative growth next year because of the El Nino effect. And the rest of the figures are there for you to appreciate. Next slide, please. Yes. Here, I just wanted to show you which are the largest sectors in the economy, or the share of each important sector in the economy. They're looking at just the 2023 figures. So in 2023, you can see that the mining sector is down 12.6%, agriculture is 12.6%, mining is at 13.2%, but the largest sector is actually wholesale and retail trade sector. Where, in the UK, they used to say we're national shopkeepers. Maybe we're not too far from that. But it tells you that this service sector is very, very important. It is 18.8%. The rest are there for you to push. You see, the financial service sector has moved up from 7.5 in 2021 to 8.2%. You see which one are small sectors. But there we are. I think the highlights are that the wholesale and retail sector is large, and then the mining and agricultural sectors, good idea, hold it. Maybe a few comments about the agricultural sector. Next slide, please. The growth in the sector, you can see since 2018, we had an 18.4% growth in 2018, then the dip in 2019 at 10.4%, and then 4.1% in 2020, and now up to 2023 we're looking at that growth of above 10%. Next slide, please. Then just some useful takeaways about production. You can see in 2017 we produced about 2.2 million 2.2 million metric tons of maize. Then went down quite sharply to 777,000 tons in 2019 because of that dip, but we've recovered. So this year we expect about 2.3 million metric tons of maize. On cotton production, it's been up and down, you know. Groundnuts, up and down. Sorghum, mainly up. Sugarcane, flat-ish. Soybeans, seriously up. I see 36,000 metric tons in 2017. In 2023 is 106,000 metric tons. So what we can safely say really is that we are now food secure at a national level. It doesn't mean that every village has enough food, but it means that some other villages have access, and there's also more food in our reserves at GNB. We're able to distribute to those who need the food. Next slide, please. Just the wheat situation. You will see that back in 2017, we produced 160,000 metric tons of wheat. Went down to 95 in 2019, which was a worst year, and now we've more than recovered. Last year, 2022, we produced 375,000 metric tons, and our prognosis for 2024 is that we'll be at 400,000. So it's looking good, and we should be importing any wheat. We should start exporting, frankly. Looking at the national herd in terms of cattle, next slide, please. Again, we have seen we saw the dip in 2019 from a very high figure in 2018, but there's been, after that dip in 2019, there's been recovery. You can see those bars, they keep edging upwards after the 2020 watershed mark. On milk production, it's been a steady progress upwards. We're now at 91.4 million liters of milk. But it's been steady progress up from as low as 66.4 million in 2017. It's steady progress. Now, I see there's also the same story applies to egg production. Since there are many farmers in this room, I think I should spend just a bit more time on agriculture. Beef production also just keep going. Right. Now, let me just take me to the mining sector slide. Thank you. Thank you. I think the story really about mining, the news story about mining, is the role of the lithium sector, which has started becoming a significant contributor to both output as well as exports. And as government, we've insisted that we need to beneficiate. You know, when you move from basically raw lithium to lithium concentrate, your price jumps up quite a bit. And then from lithium concentrate to lithium silicate, your price jumps 10 times. So clearly, beneficiation is the way to go. And I'm very pleased with what we're seeing from prospect lithium in the Koromons area. We have every intention now to move beyond lithium concentrate to lithium sulfate, which is really the next level. The table that they might even go as far as lithium carbonate, which is, I guess, one step below the full lithium battery material. So that is pleasing indeed. We'll be able to maximize value here, maximize taxes, create more jobs, but as well as maximize export earnings. Basically, this industry has reached this $12 billion mark in terms of target. It's great progress. I must say this. The mining sector also has been driving a lot of the foreign direct investment that you see in the country. In fact, some of the investment comes in the form of equipment. So we have to change a bit of our accounting to make sure that we also account for the value of the equipment that is brought into the country. Because it's value coming into the country. Either it's coming in the form of cash or in the form of equipment. It's all value coming into the country for purposes of production. That's commendable. So you'll find that when we account for cash that has come in terms of FDI, we tend to undervalue the real value that has been brought into the country. Now, next slide, please. Then just a few figures, a lot of figures. Just looking at our gold output, Kevin has a lot more figures. You can see in 2017 with with 26 tons, 2017. 2023, we are looking at 36 tons. So that's quite a nice, steady increase. Lithium, before 2018, we recorded zero actually. 2019, then we had 63,000 metric tons. Now we're at 882,000 metric tons, a 1,300% increase. Black granite, again, you see the steady increase. In fact, almost in every area, you're seeing that steady increase, but with the exception of nickel. Palladium also, we are from 11,822 to 14,214 in 2023. So that's really the trajectory that we're seeing in the mining sector for our key minerals, and that's what is driving this sector. Looking at manufacturing, the manufacturing sector, again, we're pleased with the trend that we're seeing in capacity utilization, where we're currently about 60% in terms of capacity utilization, up from as low as 36% in 2019. So there's been a remarkable recovery, and that's why you see easily 80% of the goods on the shelves being domestically produced. I now turn to the tourism sector. I think the slides are frozen. Keep going. Tourism sector. Again, we've seen the recovery of this sector since COVID. Before we had something like what, in terms of foreign arrivals, about 2.4 million people in 2017. And then we had a sharp drop to 639,000 people in 2020 and further in 2021. And then now we're back to just over 1 million people, tourists who are visiting. So we're in recovery mode, but you can feel the sharp drop that really hurt the sector enormously. Just keep moving. looking at the earnings from the sector, I must say that right now we are per person, per tourist, we're earning $1,000 per person, compared to $500 in 2017. So there's been an improvement in per capita earnings, although with fewer tourists, there are less of the backpackers, I think, and we have more higher-end tourists. That's a good thing. Airline arrivals, we're down to 3 airlines in 2020 due to COVID, but now we're back at about 17, which is the highest level since 2015. And I think with our beautiful airport, it will attract more, airlines. I think. Let's keep going. In the ICT sector, again, we've made steady progress. Just looking at internet penetration in terms of data usage, we're making steady progress. So these are some of the drivers of the economy from a microeconomic point of view, which I thought I should highlight. I now turn to the issue of prices or inflation. We've seen that there is a correlation between the exchange rate, particularly the parallel exchange rate, and inflation. And we've taken certain measures to stabilize the exchange rate. I can go into that detail, but the government will also spend a bit of time on that. By stabilizing the exchange rate, we've been able to de-link that from inflationary pressures. We've seen the year-on-year inflation decelerate down to 14.8% in September, for example, from as high as 30.9% in June of this year. The month-on-month is now under control at about 1%, fluctuating 1% and 2% or so. This is down from as high as 12.1% in June this year. So clearly the measures that we have taken to stabilize the exchange rate are bearing fruit, and inflation is coming under control. The measures we've taken have to do with basically fiscal measures, living within our means as a government, and making sure that we smooth payments to contractors, or paying some of them in US dollars only, more in US dollars versus the domestic currency. All those factors have contributed to containing inflation, insisting on the value for money process in our procurement processes. All of that is headed to the stability that we see. Then on the monetary front, the government will elaborate, it has been really liquidity management, containing growth in money supply, providing alternative assets for store value, such as the gold tokens. How many of you are buyers of gold tokens? Just checking. Okay, let's start with gold coins. Gold coins. The governor, none of your MPs are holders of the gold coin. I hate you well. Therefore, I will retreat. So those alternative store value assets, which have been launched through our central bank, and they are achieving the goal that we're trying to achieve, which is stability. We'll digitize the gold coin. We now have a gold-backed digital token, which can be loaded onto your card, and we're able to use that to pay for goods and services, Pick and Pay or wherever. And most banks are now linked to the system, so you should be able to pay without difficulty. I must be clear, ZIG, or the gold-backed digital token, is not a currency. It is a store of value, an alternative store of value assets, but with the added characteristic of being transferable, but also it can be used for transaction purposes in order to consume goods and services, but it is not a currency. You can see the impact of our measures. Let's keep going. Next slide. I now want to turn to the external sector in terms of imports. What we've seen is a sharp growth, a steep drop, a growth in imports. Where we were in 2019, we're importing something like $5.4 billion worth of imports. By end of 2022, we're 9.6 billion. And this year we should end up at about $10 billion worth of imports. It shows you that the economy is growing. The economy that is not growing cannot increase its imports, cannot afford its imports. This is just proof that the economy is indeed growing. The graph is clear. I now turn to exports. In 2018, our exports were $5.2 billion US dollars. 5.2. But look at 2022, we're at 7.2. 2023, we're at 7.3. And 2024, next year, we're at 8 billion. So you can see again the steady growth in exports. An economy that is not expanding, that is not growing, cannot have this steady improvement in export performance. This is also proof that our economy is growing. We always want to know the difference between exports and imports, just to be able to measure inflows and outflows. Because if you have more inflows versus outflows, we are a healthier economy. We are a healthier economy. There's no bleeding. But if you have more outflows than inflows, you've got a problem. We are bleeding. We are going to create risk for your exchange. So in our situation, I'm happy to report that if you look at our inflows coming from our exports and you add remittances, those two together on one side, compared to our imports, which are actually outflows because we're paying out others, those are outflows, the difference is positive. So we're in a very healthy situation. Our current account, that's what it's called, the difference between those two, is positive, and that's a good thing. That is a good thing. So we expect that our current account will end this year at about 248.5 million US dollars. Slightly lower than last year, but it is quite healthy. And we've been in this positive situation for the last 5 years, in fact. And this is quite commendable. I thought that I should compare Zimbabwe to other countries, just to show you that we're not a small economy, we're not an insignificant lot, we're a significant lot. So take a look. Botswana. Botswana's GDP, the size of GDP, is 21.1 billion. The growth rate this year, Botswana expected is 3.8%. The value of Botswana's exports is 7.5 billion. It's mainly downwards. Look at Malawi, GDP at 13.2 billion, growth rate 1.6 billion, value of exports 1 billion. In Mozambique, the size of the economy is 18.7 billion. Growth rate 2.3%, value of exports 2 billion. Rwanda, 14.4 billion, size of the economy, 6.2% rate of growth, 1.6 billion in terms of value of exports. Zambia, 30.6 billion, that's the size of the Zambian economy, 3.6% rate of growth, 10.1% value of exports. Now Zimbabwe, value of the economy is 32.4 billion. And I was arguing with the IMF to say, we're at 35, but I'll take 32.4. I'm happy with that. But just look at the size of the economy compared to Zambia, Rwanda, Mozambique, Malawi, and Botswana. We're not an insignificant lot. We look at our growth rate, again, this year we said our growth rate is 5.5%. Colleagues were doing well. Looking at the value of our exports at 8 billion, on this table, Zambia is ahead of us. We export a lot of copper and cobalt, it's okay. But look at where the others are. So colleagues, my point is, Zimbabwe economy is growing. It is growing significantly. It is a significant economy. Next slide, please. I now turn to the budgetary issues, fiscal side. On the fiscal front, colleagues, in 2018, the revenues that we raised from our taxes and non-taxes amounted to about $2 billion US. Right? But now, look at those figures. Up to 2024, we're looking at about $7 billion US. We're not a small economy. An economy that can produce $7 billion, up from $2 billion in 2018, it means that this economy has been growing because tax revenues come from the economy. We're a significant economy. Let's press on. In terms of expenditure performance, in 2018 we had $3 billion. Now, again, we're at $7 billion. But we should be slightly more than that, because I know we'll be in deficit. Again, we are not a small economy. An economy that can spend $7 billion, we are not a small economy.
My respect to the Speaker, Advocate Ndenda Honorable, and also to our Honorable Chimamanda, who is our Senate President, and the deputies, my sister, Honorable. My sister, and also the Deputy Clerk of Parliament, all honorable ministers here present, colleagues.